The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Dallas Cowboys got a thrilling overtime win in week 2, but it comes with big concerns.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to start with the offense. You and I were talking pre-show about how bad this offense looked in the first quarter. Landon, you said they ran 10 total plays in the first quarter. The scoring picked up a little bit in the second quarter. And then to start the third quarter, they had an interception. Everything just felt so clunky. But in the fourth quarter, they scored 20 points. In overtime, they kicked the game-winning field goal. Things picked up. Why did it take them so long to get started?
Yeah, I mean, it just really felt like, well, first of all, for the offense, you can't really speak to this without kind of at least dipping into the fact that the Cowboys defense was on the field for almost the entire first quarter. You talked about the 10 snaps, but it's not even just the snaps. I mean, it was just that for the first, I think, almost 9 minutes of the game, the Cowboys offense didn't even get on the field. So, and then when they got on the field, it felt like it was a little bit clunky. They had that whole situation with where they got into a 3rd and 1 situation. Then they tried to run the sneak that they kind of mistimed a little bit, which, by the way, I like the concept of faking that you're faking a short yardage thing. You just gotta, snap the ball on time to make sure it works properly. But even after that, like, it just felt like things were a little bit disjointed, a little bit clunky. We saw a couple more drops. It felt like the Cowboys were struggling to get their targets to CeeDee Lamb and to Pickens the way they wanted to. And just opportunity was one thing for sure, but then it felt like when they did get the ball early in the game, they were pressing. They weren't able to kind of get the movement in the run game that they want. It just felt like everything was difficult, in a way that it certainly loosened up as the game went on.
Yeah, so starting, I'm going to go the 10-minute mark in the third quarter. Listen to these Cowboy drives. 6 plays, 90 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 56 yards, field goal. 10 plays, 85 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 71 yards, touchdown. 4 plays, 21 yards, field goal. That's the Brandon Aubrey 64-yard field goal. And then they got the field goal in overtime. Like, the offense really started to click in the second half. It's just, we've got to find ways for this to be throughout the game, because last week, Landon, it was the first 2 drives of the game, up and down the field touchdowns. The Cowboys scored on every drive in the first half. And then the second half, they didn't score. This week, it was the first half where they started out really slow, and then things picked up in the second half. Can they ever put together a full game? Listen, I understand you're not going to have a game where you score on every single drive, but it would be nice to see them be a little bit more balanced than what we've seen over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, part of it was just lack of opportunity. It felt like they couldn't convert in that first series. They got the ball. And then after that, it just felt like they struggled to find good targets for their key players. I think that if I remember, CeeDee Lamb ended the first half with only like 4 targets in the entire half. He ended the game with 11 targets. So they clearly doubled that up to get to the second half, right? To get through the rest of the game. I think as the game kind of went on, they made adjustments to the coverage that was being played against them. And then you started to see not just the kind of DPI offense that you were getting from Pickens at a certain point, but actually completing passes to Pickens, right? And then completing passes to CeeDee Lamb down the field. So I just felt like early on, they struggled. They weren't necessarily trusting their tackles, right? They were trying to do a lot of short passing stuff early, and then it was a lot of kind of contested catch stuff. There weren't guys like running widely open. And then as the game went on, it felt like guys were able to break free a little bit more. They started throwing the ball a little bit further down the field, which I think helped guys like CeeDee and Pickens shake loose a little bit more. I think those early first half targets to Ferguson, I think loosened things up a little bit more on the outside. And once it did, they were starting to hit them more with the kind of out routes, the crossing stuff, and the kind of deep 9 stuff to Pickens that even when they weren't completing it, they were getting very obvious deep. I mean, I was worried. I was worried about them just basically running out of defensive pass interference calls that the rest would just stop calling them at a certain point. But they were all so egregious that I was like, oh, well, I mean, there's no way they're not.
You kind of have to. Yeah. They're all wide out in the open, right?
Yeah. I think, part of the issue is that, like we said, the Cowboys got the ball for such a short amount of time in the first quarter. They couldn't quite figure out the way that the Giants were playing them just because they didn't get a lot of looks. And I think as the game got on, as they saw how they were being played, as they saw the kind of schematic way that they were trying to attack the Cowboys, they were able to make some adjustments. And I will say, like, it does feel like good that the Cowboys were able to make those adjustments and kind of shake things loose in the latter part of the game. You would have liked to see that happen earlier, but I think, honestly, they just didn't get enough looks to kind of figure out everything early.
I went back and looked 5 plays in the first quarter of this game for the offense. 5.
I mean, it's crazy.
Now we'll talk about why they only had 5 plays in just a little bit, but I did want to mention the running game because I'm sure we'll talk about Dak Prescott. Javonte Williams, 18 carries for 97 yards. He had that 30-yard touchdown, which, if you put like the over-under on longest rushing touchdown for Javonte Williams this year, I might have said like 9.5 over on FanDuel. But no, a 30-yard rushing touchdown. He also caught 6 passes out of the backfield. Javonte Williams is not, Saquon Barkley. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's been a pretty good running back through 2 games for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. We talked about it averaging well over 5 yards a carry this game. I didn't have to get a chance to see what his success rate numbers were, but I mean, he had over a 50% success rate game last week. I don't know if it was that
80%.
high this game.
80%.
Really, it was 80%. Oh,
80% last week. I think this week was like 45. I'll double check though. So it was still above average, right?
So yeah, and I think that's what you're looking for: efficiency from this running game, and then to be able to break a 30-yard touchdown run like that, I think was just a culmination of the kind of dinks and dunks that he was getting throughout the game, and then eventually the tackling started to get worse. And I think that's what helped with the Cowboys run game, especially as it wore on. It felt like the Cowboys offensive line kind of struggled to get movement, and they kept at it. And then you started to see the Giants get worn down a little bit, not only in their run fits, but even when they were bouncing off of running backs and not able to make the tackles. Miles Sanders got into it a little bit as well with getting in there with the touchdown. So yeah, just an efficient run game to kind of go with this passing attack, I think, is what you're looking for. And I think that's what you've gotten so far with Williams. Now, if you can add another explosive element to it, I think you may have.
And we'll see if Jaden Blue can eventually be that answer, right? If probably not this week, but second half of the year, whenever he comes into this offense, it'll be interesting to see what he can add. Real quick on Dak Prescott, I thought he struggled in the first half and in the first drive of the third quarter where he threw the interception, and then he was fantastic in overtime, in fourth quarter and overtime. Made the plays that he needed to make. He used his legs to set up the game-winning field goal. He was aggressive in the right spots. He was throwing the ball down the field. Just got to get him off to a little quicker starts like he did last week. But outside of the first half, brilliant.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that he was like necessarily terrible in the first half. It just felt like it was a lot of bad opportunities, some bad looks at a couple different points. It felt like he was borderline getting into the kind of situation where he was forcing it a little bit.
Well, I think a good example is like that George Pickens ball he threw to the pylon. It just had way too much air and it wasn't far enough, so it allowed the safety to get in there and just mess up the timing. Like if you're going to throw a ball to George Pickens, like
put it up and away.
Throw it way up so nobody else can get it, or throw it to the back pylon so the safety can't get there. It was a lot of that little stuff. Or like right before half, throwing the ball to Ferguson for 3 yards and not getting out of bounds, so you can't even set up a field goal. Like just little miscues that aren't awful by themselves, but I thought they added. But again, he played so good in the second half that I don't want to kill him for that.
Last thing. Yeah, he just needs to tighten up the simple throws, right? You and I were talking about the throws to the flat, the screen pass that just felt like it drifted, it fell to the floor too early. Those are passes you got to put on the receiver so that they can make moves right away. It just felt like Dak was just a little bit discombobulated earlier, and then as the game went on, he became lights out Dak like we were used to seeing.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
Ben Johnson? What happened to Ben Johnson? Oh, Lions, their offense is nothing without Ben Johnson. The Lions heard everything that was said this last week. Lions were horrible in week 1. Right? They were bad. Other than a late Isaac Tesla garbage time touchdown, the offense did nothing. Today they put, yes, a 50 burger on Benny Boy and the Bears. 4th down late in the game. Starters in the game. Up 45-21. 4th down and goal from the 6-7. Easy to just take the points, get a Jake Bates field goal, and get everybody off the field. But no. No hesitation from Dan Campbell. No hesitation from Jared Goff. They go for the 50-piece. They get it. Goff hits St. Brown for the 3rd touchdown of the day between those two. St. Brown jumps into the leap zone, and then he makes it easily. Goff's up there struggling to get up there, smashes into some little girl. But it was hilarious. The Lions had fun today, and they ran up the score. Ran it up on their guy, Ben Johnson, who in the offseason made a lot of comments about a lot of things. Ben Johnson was so amped up for this game and so focused on this game. He blew off the halftime interview with Megan O'Leary, the Fox broadcaster, the sideline reporter. They come out of the 3rd quarter. Megan O'Leary says, I tried to get Ben Johnson to talk. On the way to the locker room, he ran right by me. But I did talk to Dan Campbell. Ben Johnson wanted this game so bad, but guess what? His team sucks. The Bears' offensive line is a joke. They're still a joke. They went on and got four new starters. They're all bad. The Lions attacked today. They ran the football. The offensive line won them this game. Special teams from the beginning of the game. First play of the game. The Santos kicks it off, and Jacob Sailors puts his foot out of bounds and fields the ball. That was a smart move. Put the Lions at the 40-yard line, kick out of bounds. Their kick coverage was better. Their punt coverage was better. The return game was better. Yes, Bates missed a field goal, but everything today was crisper and more sharp. And Dan Campbell said that after the game. We heard what everybody said about us last week. The train keeps rolling. They knew how badly they played, but they also heard some of the voices saying, I don't know if this team's going to be as good without their offensive coordinator. Heck, their defensive coordinator. I thought Calvin Shepard's defense was flying around the football today. 4 sacks on Caleb Williams. A huge pressure that led to a vintage Caleb interception. Lions got takeaways today. Lions didn't turn it over today. This is what I'm talking about. 52-21, the final. We will hit on the offensive line more, which I want to do. We'll hand out some game balls for you at the end of the day, at the end of the podcast as well. So excited to be with you today on Locked On Lions. This was a fun game. This was a game this team had to have with next week's daunting trip to Baltimore. Ravens destroyed the Browns today. And next week for Monday Night Football is not going to be an easy task. The Ravens have had the Lions number. We know that. You got the doink field goal that went through. You got the blowout a couple years ago. Remember this, though. The Lions have not lost back-to-back games since October of 2022. That's pretty good. That's real good. All right. Dan Campbell's teams bounce back. And today was so much fun to watch. It really was. And that third quarter where the Lions have been bad the last few years, third quarters have been an issue. Not today. Lions outscored the Bears 10-0 in the third. They smacked them in the mouth. Goff today had a near perfect passer rating, 156. He was 2.3 points shy of a perfect passer rating, which is 158.3. He goes 23 for 28, 334 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, wasn't sacked, wasn't picked, passer rating of 156. Jahmyr Gibbs near 100 yards on the ground. He had 94. 9-4. David Montgomery averaged 5 a pop, including a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 100 yards receiving. J-Mo, 100 yards receiving. Tesla with the one-handed catch every week, baby. Every week. Tesla's got the one-handed grab. I can't believe it. I saw somebody today on Twitter say, who is this guy? What do you mean, who is this guy? Have you not been watching the last few weeks? Wake up there, pizza guy. Brock Wright, Brocktober early on. Touchdown catch. Everybody got into the act today. Again, 4 sacks on Caleb Williams, who did throw 2 touchdowns, both to Rome Odunze. Odunze is really good. Lions had their problems with him today. 7 catches for 128, and he sat on my fantasy bench. But I loved the way this team came out today and attacked early on. They were aggressive. They were into it. They were physical. Now, again, we're all going to sit here and go, and I'm going to sit here and say it right now. Where was this last week in Green Bay? The Packers were the aggressors in that game. First series, first drive, you just had a feeling. And I know for a lot of the guys last week, it's their first time back out there. Tate Ratledge had never played alongside Penei Sewell in a game before, or Graham Glasgow in a game before. Tyleik Williams, who had 2 huge bat downs of passes today. This was his second game now. His motor was running. He was more into it today than last week, which was kind of like, oh, shoot, my first real action here. Right? And for the coordinators, for John Morton and for Calvin Shepard, they did a whale of a job today. Shepard was mixing up some of his looks defensively. They came after Caleb Williams. Brian Branch had a monster game today. And good news for those of you that didn't hear, Brian Branch said in the locker room after the game today was just a cramp. He kind of got leg whipped by his teammate Jack Campbell. By the way, they both were in the game when it was 45-21. I'm like, get these guys out of the game, please. But Branch says it's just a cramp. He should be fine for Monday night in Baltimore. 52-21 Lions over the Bears to get to 1-1. Bears fall to 0-2. The Bears, they're a laughing stock. Look, I've tried to be nice. I've tried to say, hey, Chicago might have a better team this year. Hey, the Bears are building something here under Chef Poles. They still suck. How is Tyreek Stevenson still playing meaningful snaps for them after what he did last year in Washington with that Hail Mary? Remember that? The Lions picked on him all day today. They had back-to-back plays. They had the Tesla one-handed catch, which was awesome that they got Stevenson all turned around. And then on the touchdown pass, the very next play, they picked on Stevenson, and St. Brown got the touchdown. John Morton knew what to do. They knew who to pick on. Once Jalen Johnson was out of that game, and you hope he's okay, he's been injured the last couple of weeks, the Lions feasted on that Chicago secondary.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast.
The 2025 Philadelphia Eagles are now 2-0 after a nail-biting 20-17 win over the Kansas City Chiefs, yet again taking down Patrick Mahomes to get to 2-0 on the year. And this was a stressful one from start to finish. It wasn't always pretty. The passing game had a lot of issues 2 weeks in a row that we are definitely going to get into. The defense made you nervous at the end. A giant touchdown from Tyquan Thornton puts the Chiefs only down 3. An onside kick was attempted. Maybe a fumble on the final tush-push play. Like, this was as much of a roller coaster game as you'll get between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and that's not surprising. This is one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL right now. It's maybe the biggest out-of-conference rivalry in the history of football, but the Eagles get it done. Why? Even though it's not always pretty, things don't always work for this football team in the Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts era, but when it has to work, it works. They always find a way to get it done when it matters most against the best of the best. Like, not just their clutch against the Dallas Cowboys or the Washington Commanders or the lesser teams they play on their schedule. No, this is the current dynasty of the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs that have won 3 Super Bowls, have been to 5 of the last 6 games that compete for the Lombardi Trophy. And the Eagles have beaten them 3 times in a row now for many reasons. But the main reason is, as I said to open up the show, this team, this current iteration of the Philadelphia Eagles will go down as one of the most clutch, big game cores in the history of football. And it was so perfectly on display in back-to-back drives when you're only up 13-10, and it feels like you have no answers against pressure. Steve Spagnuolo's defense is just going after Jalen Hurts, completely humbling new play caller, Eagles offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. The Chiefs are driving down inside the 15-yard line, ready to take the lead, potentially 17-13. Drew Makuba makes the play of the game, getting an interception in the back of the end zone, nearly taking it to the house. And then the next drive, the Eagles go up 2 scores, which would be all the difference, because they finally did have an answer. That's, again, what makes this core so special, is, yeah, they're going to be, I'm coming to an acceptance point with this passing game, that they're going to be inconsistent throughout the majority of Jalen Hurts' time with the Eagles, as long as Nick Sirianni is not a play caller, a good play caller, and they're losing coordinators. Like, it's going to be part of the reality of this current era of Eagles football. But again, when you have to have it, even in the passing game, like the NFC Championship last year in the Super Bowl, this year against Kansas City, when they are forcing your hand to figure it out, they did figure it out. Jalen Hurts sees an all-out blitz coming, and he puts the ball, knowing he's going to take a big hit, puts the ball on the money, a rainbow of a pass to Devontae Smith, who posts up one of the best cornerbacks in football. Trent McDuffie just goes up and gets it one-on-one in the right corner, right in front of the end zone, pins them at the 1. The Eagles get a tush-push touchdown by Jalen Hurts to take a 20-10 lead. That sequence, those 2 drives, show you how battle-tested this era is. It shows you how clutch this core is. They never get rattled. They are in such a brutal environment, and so many of these new players on defense, like Drew Makuba, have never been in this kind of situation in the NFL as a rookie in Arrowhead against Patrick Mahomes, this era's Tom Brady, and you pick him off in the back of the end zone. This team has just gone through so much that it shouldn't surprise you how clutch they are. And it shouldn't surprise you how clutch even the young players are, because look where they come from. Jahad Campbell played for Alabama. Drew Makuba played a lot of big games at the University of Texas. Jordan Davis, who was outstanding again today. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Those guys played for the University of Georgia, competing for national championships. This team has been to the Super Bowl in 2 of the last 3 years. They have gotten into so many close battles with that Kansas City Chiefs football team. It shouldn't surprise you that they were able to figure it out. That's what I'm so impressed about this football team with is, again, yes, there is definitely a lot that they need to work on the offensive side of the football. I am very concerned right now about Kevin Patullo through 2 weeks as the play caller from a pass game perspective. I thought the run game again today was really good, but the pass game has some problems. But again, when you have the talent you do on both sides of the football, when you have this experience, this championship caliber clutch gene, you're always going to win games. Like, I'm never going to lose hope in this football team. They figure it out. Jalen Hurts could not figure out the blitz all game. Kevin Patullo was not giving him many answers. Devontae Smith even, like, he made it right. The exact same sequence, the exact same situation happened a few plays before where Jalen put the same ball on the money to him in the left corner by the end zone, and Devontae Smith dropped the football. Devontae gets another chance. If you give this Eagles football team a second chance to capitalize on an opportunity, they're not going to let it slip through the cracks. And it's so almost poetic. It's so fitting that Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith were the two guys to make the play, because they've been the two most clutch players, in my opinion, on this football team in the last 3-4 seasons. Of course, you can include Saquon Barkley in there and A.J. Brown and so many of those defensive players. But Jalen and Smitty, it always feels like when there's got to be a play to be made, especially against Kansas City, they're the guys. Like, even when they didn't win in Super Bowl 57, Jalen Hurts, the deep ball to Devontae down the left sidelines to get back in that football game, to tie the game up, it was Smitty that made that play. In 2023, to put the game on ice, Jalen throws a go ball down the right sidelines to win the football game. Guess who was on the other side of that throw? Devontae Smith. Last year in the Super Bowl, guess who's your leading receiver? Guess who had the dagger touchdown reception from Jalen Hurts? It was Devontae Smith. So it was kind of fitting for the narrative that those are the two guys that put the game on ice today, and they're going to figure it out. I think the early start of the NFL season is always wonky. It's always up and down. But to get that kind of win week 2, when you have still a lot of moving parts to this roster, against a desperate Kansas City Chiefs football team that until just now has never started 0-2 in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era, considering how bad the passing game looked for a while, considering the circumstances in the second half, tip of the cap to this football team. They figure it out. And that's what makes this team so special. Again, they are not elite in the way you're used to elite teams looking in the NFL the last decade, the last 10 to 15 years. The Eagles are very old school. They run the football. They lean on their defense. The passing game certainly isn't consistent. They're not special in the way that you're used to seeing special in the NFL, at least in the younger fans' lifetime, in the 21st century, in the 2010s, the 2020s, if you will, probably. But elite is elite. And this team kind of reflects who, like, their two biggest parts are Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, the quarterback and the head coach. They kind of perfectly encapsulate their quarterback and head coach. Like, who their quarterback and head coach is represents who this football team is as a whole. They're elite in their own very special, unique way. Nick Sirianni is not elite as a head coach in the same way that you're used to seeing it across football. He is not elite in the same way that Sean McVay is, or Andy Reid, right? Or, and any of the top coaches in football, even when Bill Belichick was with New England, or the greatest of the greats in NFL history. Jalen Hurts is not the same elite quarterback that you're used to seeing, like you are a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes or the other guys in front of him, like Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. He's very unique. But I tried to really push this narrative during the Super Bowl week last year, where different doesn't mean worse, right? And Jalen Hurts, he has his deficiencies as a passer. Nick Sirianni has his deficiencies as a head coach. He's not a good play caller. But I'm just starting to accept, even though I want them to be a lot more consistent as a passing football team, there are certain things that I like in a consistent winner, what I want my organization to look like, how I want my team to be built. You have to just accept this team for who they are, because it works. Like, they are great in their own way. Yes, the passing game needs to be better moving forward, but they're never going to radically change who they are. Like, this is just who they are, and it works. They beat the Chiefs again. This is the Eagles league now. I mean, I don't want to say Kansas City's done, but they've beaten Patrick Mahomes now 3 times in a row in 2023, 2024, and 2025. And they kind of have their number on defense. That defensive performance by Vic Fangio was a masterpiece.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Georgia's dominance against Tennessee. And I swear, if we get to talk about I looked down at the shoe and there was a cross on the shoe. And I knew right then old NASA head was going to get us that win. The second old NASA head came over and I saw the cross. If we get to talk about Butch, I'm a happy person, brick by brick. Tennessee is our little brother. We are schooling them. Kirby is all up in Josh Heupel's head. And it's so good to see, Daniel.
Listen, I don't make a lot of streaks in college football because, to be fair, streaks are for the fans. They're not, these players are only here for 3 years, 4 years, in some cases 5 years. In the case of, COVID era players, sometimes 20 years. I don't know how long these kids are playing college football for. They're only here for a limited amount of time. Coaches, for the most part, are only here for a limited amount of time. So Georgia's beaten Tennessee 9 straight years. Well, Josh Heupel's only been there for the last 5 of those years. And so you can't blame Josh Heupel for the losses that happened under Jeremy Pruitt and Butch Jones and these kind of nonsense coaches. Okay, so listen, when we talk about these winning streaks, one program over another, it's for us. Correct. It's for the fans. But the thing about Kirby Smart, Clint, is, and some people don't like this, I can tell you definitively, it rubs some people the wrong way.
We have the receipts.
If you are very fragile and small inside,
correct,
it's going to be tough for you to deal with a guy like Kirby, because I'm here to tell you, and I mince no words about this, and I do not mean it as a compliment, although it does make him a lot like me and you, Clint. Kirby Smart's about as petty as it gets.
As we are actively seeking people like heat-seeking missiles to come and get after you. It brings us joy.
He's a little small in that way. He's a little bit, he takes it a little bit personal. And listen, go and watch the Bulls documentary, the Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. Yep. What you find, go listen to a Tiger Woods interview. What you find, go talk to Muhammad Ali, listen to a Muhammad Ali interview. What you find is that the greatest to ever do it.
Yep.
Go look at Coach Saban today on College Game Day, trolling Tennessee fans behind him about dominating them when he was coaching in Alabama. The greatest ones in their field, they take it personally, Clint. They own it. They wear it.
They hate losing more than they enjoy winning. Like that. And that's Kirby Smart. He loves winning, yes. But it's personal to him when he has his name on something and he takes an L. He hates everything about it. He remembers it fundamentally. Look at this team compared to last team. We're going to talk about a couple things that are different about this team still that I saw at Tennessee. I saw something different of this team than I had last year because Kirby took it upon himself. Fire, passion, energy the whole entire offseason, because last year we didn't have it and this year we do. And he is absolutely a petty child when it comes to this competitiveness. 100%.
Let me hit you with something, Clint, that I believe is going to blow your mind. Okay. Josh Heupel, a very successful Tennessee head football coach.
One of 3 coaches, I believe, that has a winning record against top 25 opponents.
A very successful Tennessee football coach. During his first and second seasons as the Tennessee head coach in 2021 and 2022, his first 2 seasons at the helm, Between those 2 seasons, he accumulated a 14-game home winning streak.
It's very good.
Do you know who ended that winning streak, Clint?
Who was that?
I think you do.
I do.
I think you already know it was Georgia that ended that winning streak. So in those 2 seasons, he accumulated 14 consecutive home wins. That is his longest home winning streak of his coaching tenure. His current active home winning streak is, of course, 0 games.
But there have been 0 days since there was an accident at Neyland.
Yeah. No, there was an accident, all right. Okay, Kirby. By the way, I'm sorry. We'll get to it in a second. Focus. Kirby Smart is currently on a 10-game Neyland Stadium winning streak.
So let me understand if I'm grasping what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So Neyland Stadium, which by all accounts, by everybody who talks, everybody who visits, everybody who goes, opposing SEC coaches, current coaches, retired coaches, old coaches, will say that Neyland Stadium is one of the hardest, if not the hardest place to go play. One of the biggest stadiums in the entire world, houses a whole lot of rowdy fans, and you all get after it up in Knoxville. We admit that 100%.
Yeah.
During that time, Josh Heupel has amassed, and other coaches have amassed, an incredible win streak.
Yep.
Kirby Smart, you're telling me, Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
10 times has walked into Neyland.
10 consecutive games, current streak at Neyland Stadium. He has won. It doesn't need to be said, but let me say that Tennessee, Josh Heupel's 14-game home winning streak. Could I read you some of the opponents?
Okay.
South Alabama, Vanderbilt, Ball State, Akron, UT Martin, Kentucky. These are some of the opponents that Tennessee managed to beat in the aforementioned 14-game home winning streak. Kirby Smart, in his 10-game winning streak at Neyland Stadium, you'll be shocked to learn the opponent in every single game was the University of Tennessee. And he beat them each and every time. Clint, this streak obviously spans his entire career as a Georgia head coach. It also spans his entire career as the defensive coordinator at Alabama. But wait, Clint, it also goes all the way back to 2005 when he was the running backs coach for the DJ Shockley-led Georgia Bulldogs when they went to Neyland Stadium in 2005 and beat the Tennessee Volunteers. Clint, Kirby may have lost to Tennessee as a player, but as a coach in any capacity, he is undefeated in Neyland Stadium. 10-0 in Neyland Stadium. From the Georgia running backs coach to the Alabama defensive coordinator to the University of Georgia head coach, Tennessee, he's never taken an L as a coach in that building.
When you have that, you might be tempted to say that therefore Neyland Stadium is not a hard place and Tennessee doesn't have good squads. You'd be tempted to say that with 10 wins in a row like that. But let me tell you this right now. That Tennessee team is a playoff team that we just beat.
Oh, we're going to talk about them in the second segment. This Tennessee team, who they are. Yeah, absolutely.
They're a playoff team and one of the best 12 teams currently in college football. Okay? 100%.
By a wide margin.
Correct.
A healthy margin.
Second thing, Neyland Stadium is raucous and crazy. That's how incredible Kirby is. It's not a detriment. It's not a downplay to Neyland and Tennessee.
No.
That's just
they throw mustard as well as anybody.
As well as anybody. Like Juan Gaston, who can throw a heifer across a quarter mile.
Better than most.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Vanderbilt did simple better. And honestly, physicality is the cornerstone of this team. This team, they're serious contenders. And that's where we're going to start, because if you watch the last two games, I just saw a stat. They've only given up 7 points in the last 6 quarters. That is unreal. 7 points in the last 6 quarters. That's an outstanding stat. So Vanderbilt being contenders, that sounds crazy. It does. It sounds insane. It sounds unhinged. It sounds, if you would have told me that after week 3, I would be talking about Vanderbilt being in contention to possibly move into a spot into Atlanta, I would have called you crazy. But this team is showing me that they actually are contenders. And this is not just, hey, they've played well lately. They've got a program. They've got some things. They've got a foundation. And honestly, Clark Lee said it, and I agree with him. The rest of the schedule is winnable. Honestly, the way Vanderbilt plays football, the rest of this season, the rest of the games on the schedule are winnable. They're contenders, guys. Like, you may not want to admit it. This may be too weird for you that Vanderbilt is a contender in the SEC, and it really hasn't been ever. They maybe sniffed it with James Franklin. They won 9 games, but this is a special team. And this is a team that tough road environments obviously doesn't bother them. Lane Stadium, they withstood that. Obviously, the initial onslaught was going to happen. They withstood it, made adjustments, and then just physically punished Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is now broken. They've fired their head coach. South Carolina, initial onslaught. Well, actually, Vanderbilt set the tone and marched right down the field and scored on their first possession. South Carolina, not to anyone's surprise, ripped it right back down the field to equalize. And then they both kind of traded punches, and then Vanderbilt just settled in. They got Zaylen Wood made that interception, and I think that changed the course for South Carolina. Obviously, then Lenore Sellers goes down. That's not ideal, but physicality, man, they won the line of scrimmage. And they didn't just win it, they took it over. They dominated. They were opening up run lanes left and right for Pavia, Cedric Alexander, James Hill Lassiter scored a touchdown. That guy's a spark plug, dude. That guy's electric. Said it in the reaction show. That guy's electric. So the main thing we've learned from these first 3 games is that this is no fluke. They're not getting lucky in these games. They blew out South Carolina. And I get it. They didn't have Lenore Sellers. And everybody's going to say, well, they didn't have Lenore Sellers. Injury. They had everybody else. And Doty's not that bad of a quarterback. You could see how flustered and flummoxed and just absolutely befuddled and beside himself that Shane Beamer was. I used some big words there. And that will tell you everything. He thinks that they should have won. Luke Doty's a pretty good quarterback. I think Luke Doty could go up to Kentucky and start. He's mobile. He's got a good arm. He's a tough runner. He's smart. He knows what to do with the ball. You got Nick Harbor, probably the most freakish athletes in the SEC. Probably the most freakish athlete in the SEC, save maybe Ryan Williams. If you're 6'5", 240 pounds, you run a 4.3, that's freakish. And they didn't give him not one deep shot. They were shook, dude. They were shook. And that's, physicality is, like I said, physicality is a cornerstone of this team. They beat you into submission, and they love it. This offensive line takes pride in mauling you. This defensive line takes pride in mauling you. They play 12 defensive linemen. This is the second time in a hostile road environment that they've emptied the bench. Blaise Berlowitz got a meaningful series. Like, that shouldn't happen if you're ranked 12th in the country and you're playing Vanderbilt. Like, that's not the normal SEC world. South Carolina was supposed to crush Vanderbilt. And it didn't matter who was a quarterback. They were supposed to roll. Their defense was still intact. Did they stop Diego Pavia? No. Did they stop Cedric Alexander? No. They stopped him at times, but for the most part, 31 points is not stopping anybody. And they just got dominated. They just got pushed around. And Vanderbilt finally has the roster to be able to do something about it. They had the spirit. They had the coaching edge last year. They just had a roster to do it. And then Vanderbilt actually panicked a little bit in last year's matchup. That's why they lost 28-7. So, the result just flipped on its head, and it was one of those back and forth for the first quarter or so. And then Vanderbilt took over, whereas the exact opposite last year. So that's growth, and that's everything you want to see in a team that's trying to become a legitimate, not just a legitimate team this season. They're building foundations for a program, for a sustainable program that's going to have sustained success beyond Diego Pavia, beyond Langston Patterson, beyond Eli Stowers, beyond Cedric Alexander. Like, every crop of guys that come in, I think they're developing a culture and a foundation of, hey, we're not the same old Vanderbilt. We're not built to lose. We're going to win. They dominated, dude. They fit. They're contenders. They are contenders. I don't care what you say. Let's look at the schedule, because the rest of the SEC is showing that it's wide open. Alabama, yeah, they look great against Wisconsin, but I think Vanderbilt would pummel Wisconsin. They'd run right by them. Wisconsin is a shell of itself, and any Wisconsin fan, and one of my best friends, Matt Perkins, shout out to you, but Wisconsin is in the tank. So we don't really know what Alabama truly has. We'll know next week after they play Georgia. We'll see how they rise up in that matchup on the road. LSU, they look strong, but they're not invincible. Missouri, they look strong, they're not invincible. They can score in bunches. Bo Pribula is outstanding. That might be the team to watch out for also. Like, Missouri's going to be good. Texas, Arch Manning just got booed off his home field. So, like, this team's getting booed at home. And they didn't play anybody. Worth note. Auburn, I just can't trust that Auburn's going to keep it together. I think Clark Lee and Bunch are going to outcoach Auburn. Kentucky's going to have a rough year. I think they're going to get outcoached. They just can't hang. I don't think they can hang with Vanderbilt. And Tennessee, they're pretty good. They are pretty good, and they're great at home. And if Vanderbilt, that's going to be a challenge, but it's winnable. Like, Tennessee's not invincible. That's a winnable game. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's winnable. Like, no game on this schedule would I say that there's a team that's far and away the favorite. Maybe LSU, but not even them. Like, they struggled a little bit early on with Florida, and Vanderbilt's not a team you want to struggle with early on. So, again, they are contenders. 10-2 with that schedule. If you start out this run ranked 20th and you just keep winning and you go 10-2, you'll be hovering in around one of those last playoff spots. You could sneak in. Like, I know I sounded crazy when I said 10-2 on the Herb and Rod show, but it's starting to look more and more like a possibility. It really is. It really is. I don't know who the two losses are going to come against, because Alabama's not who I thought they were. Texas is definitely not who I thought they were. LSU is better than I thought they were. In Tennessee, obviously Aguilar is really, really picking up Josh Heupel's offense really well. So they're not who I thought they were. So this is going to, I mean, I don't know where the 2 losses come in. I'm going to stand by that. They're contenders. They are contenders. They physically beat you. They physically belong. They have the roster to do it. Their style of play, they belong as contenders. There's no fluke. It's no fluke. They belong as contenders. 7 points in the last 6 quarters. That's amazing. They were 50% on third down. Or as I'm recording this last night. They had 323 total yards. They had 35 minutes of possession. They only had 4 penalties this time, so they're cleaning that up. They turned the ball over once. It was an interception, really bad interception, but it was an interception. They took the ball away 4 times, so they're taking care of the ball better. Passing-wise, they threw for 177 yards. They rushed for 146. So if you look at balance as in passing and rushing, they were pretty balanced and pretty efficient all around. I felt like the play designs and all that stuff is just there. So they are contending. Physicality is the cornerstone of that. Physicality is what's making them belong. Because there's years that it's obvious they just don't belong. But this is not that year. I'm sorry for all you haters, for all you doubters. This is not that year. Pavia is on a mission.
The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
The Miami Hurricanes defense bottled up USF's rushing attack, and that set the tone for a blowout.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On another Victory Sunday, I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So much to break down after this 49-12 belt to behind session that Miami put on the Cinderella USF Bulls on Saturday night. As a result of that, and as a result of Miami improving their standing as one of the best teams in college football, College Game Day is coming to Coral Gables next week before the Hurricanes take on the Florida Gators. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about yet another freshman wide receiver breaking out. It's not the one who already broke out the first couple of weeks. Josh Moore, welcome to big time college football. Let's talk about the top performers and the top factors in Miami's 49-12 beatdown of the USF Bulls. It was not a perfect performance. There are things that we can nitpick. There was sloppiness at times, but let's start with the good. So one of the factors for the USF offense that everybody, myself included, was talking about all week was containing dual threat quarterback Byron Brown, who entered this game against the Hurricanes as USF's leading rusher, a guy who can hurt you with his legs. He hurt Florida with his legs last week, hurt Boise State, hurt a lot of teams last year, not so much Miami last year or this year running the football, but you knew Miami would have to be prepared. And the Hurricanes held Byron Brown. He did, hit some shots down the field as a passer, but as a rusher, Miami limits Brown to 2 yards on 13 rushing attempts, 2 yards. And I don't know if you had this one on your bingo card. I didn't. Carson Beck out-rushed Byron Brown, Miami's quarterback, scored a rushing touchdown and ran for 28 yards on 6 carries, as opposed to Brown, who was kept out of the end zone, and Miami held him to 2 yards on 13 rushing attempts. That was something Corey Heatherman, talked a lot about Brown, Miami's defensive coordinator, did in the Monday press conference, and how the Hurricanes would have to be prepared for him. They were prepared for him. And this is another excellent spot on the Corey Heatherman resume, because we were talking about this last week when he was at Minnesota last year. And by the way, Minnesota probably misses him a little bit. They just lost to Cal last night. But when Heatherman was coordinating Minnesota's defense, they didn't allow any quarterback to have any sort of success on the ground against Minnesota last year. So Heatherman is continuing that trend now so far with the Miami Hurricanes. Miami's defense wasn't just bottling up Brown. Miami held USF to 40 rushing yards as a team. They were ready for that. Mission accomplished. And, they also did force USF to play from behind a lot and be forced to take shots downfield. But, Miami set the tone early with their defense, and they were ready for everything USF threw at them on the ground. A couple of other stats that I like before we get to individual performers here on Miami's D. Hurricanes held the Bulls to 7 for 19 on third down. That's, a good defensive percentage, about 35% or so. So that really helped negate the tempo of USF's offense, which was another big factor for us leading into the game. If USF is picking up a lot of first downs, they run really, really fast. Their head coach, Alex Golish, who also calls their offensive plays, he's a tempo demon. And if you let them sustain drives, they're going to gas out your defense. You're not going to be able to make substitutes. They didn't sustain nearly enough drives to make that a factor. So Miami's defense was not getting gassed out. That was a big thing for the Canes. When it comes to individual performers on the D, we have to start with Miami's stud duo of defensive ends. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor in this one. They wreak havoc again. Bain and Mezzi combined for 12 tackles, 6 apiece, top of the team, each of them. They combine for 1.5 tackles for loss, a half a sack, and a pass breakup. And, of course, they were both excellent. You have to start with Bain. Ruben Bain was in the backfield constantly. And so far this season, Ruben's playing like a number 1 overall draft pick. And as usual, I think this has been the case all 3 games so far on the Pro Football Focus grades. Bain was Miami's highest graded defensive player for the 3rd straight week, 87.5. That's out of 100 for those PFF grades. Bain played 48 snaps in the game. And Akeem Mesidor graded right behind Hurricane Bain at an 86.8, second on Miami's defense, playing 47 snaps to Ruben Bain's 48. The two of them together, and I want to get too ahead of myself here, but if Miami is, blessed with that opportunity for a postseason run, if you can get into the college football playoff, maybe even win the ACC this year, because Clemson is not who we thought they were, although Florida State, of course, has looked a lot better, and Georgia Tech. Welcome to the party. They just upset Clemson yesterday. But if Miami is able to make the type of postseason run we're hoping for, being able to have edge rushers like them, and the defensive tackles are also playing really well, by the way. But Bain and Mesidor are going to be a nightmare for opposing offensive coordinators and opposing head coaches to scheme against. A couple of other shout outs on the defense. In Miami's secondary, I know they did allow a couple of explosive plays, but overall they were very good. And it was great seeing true freshman safety Bryce Fitzgerald, one of the many true freshmen playing well for this Hurricanes team. Fitzgerald grabs another interception, and it was in a big spot in this game. For the 2nd straight week, Fitzgerald already got 2 interceptions on the year. This is a guy who not only is a true freshman, but Fitzgerald wasn't even able to be here for spring football because Columbus is not one of those schools that lets you graduate early to enroll at your college. So he's only been on campus since, May, June, and Fitzgerald is playing like a veteran out there. Another safety that I really want to shout out for this one, who's played well and physical all season long, was Jacoby Thomas, the transfer from Tennessee. He puts the big hit on Byron Brown in the second half to force a fumble on USF's 2nd turnover of the game. Fitzgerald interception was the first, and Chase Smith recovered that fumble. Shout out to Chase Smith at linebacker. He had an awesome game. He was 2nd on the team in tackles with 5. he added a pass breakup, the fumble recovery, and 2 quarterback hurries in the game. So, Miami's defense, again, I'm not going to say it was completely perfect because Byron Brown, he found Chaz Nimrod for a couple of deep shots. The first of those was, an incredible, play when he was flushed out of the pocket. It was a little bit like the play that CJ Carr made against Miami for the Notre Dame touchdown a couple of weeks ago, where he just kind of threw it up and Nimrod had separation, made a great catch. But, Miami's defense overall did really well. And of course, they hold the USF to 12 points. So you can't argue with the results. And also, it was key early in the game, when USF was able to generate a couple of explosive plays and get down the field a little bit, Miami's defense held them to field goals, right? I mean, the Hurricanes were up 14 to 3 when we had that long lightning delay. They were up 14 to 6 at one point. Like, holding that offense to field goals was big. USF's other score was a touchdown and a failed 2-point conversion, but Miami's defense did a great job, and they legitimately looked transformed this year under Corey Heatherman. But let's talk about the offense. I know he threw 2 interceptions, but there's a strong case to be made that Carson Beck had another sensational game. But in a lot of ways, it was the Mark Fletcher show. And yeah, we had another freshman receiver break out in this one. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're reviewing Miami's 49-12 beatdown of the USF Bulls, which is, another ranked win for Miami. Had a ranked win against Notre Dame to start the season. Bethune-Cookman obviously not ranked, and Miami takes out the Cinderella, right? USF coming off an upset against Boise State and an upset win at Florida, and, Miami puts a stop to their great. Now, USF might still end up in the college football playoff as a G5 team because they have everything in front of them, but the Hurricanes passed their test with flying colors.